The history of Mértola has deep roots, although it is difficult to calculate its exact beginnings. Founders and builders have made the best use of the place's nature and topography through its genesis and multi-layered urban areas. An elongated and rugged peninsula enveloped in a perpetual hug by two stretches of water. The deep and wide Guadiana River from the east and the Awera stream meandering from the southwest. The exceptional defenses this provided, plus the majestic Guadiana River at its feet, have created a sense of place and made it unique. For almost 2 millennia, Mértola has been an impressive bridgehead with impregnable looks and a prosperous hub between the major hinterland of the Alentejo and the several Mediterranean and Atlantic coastal ports with which it communicated. These seas have brought with the tide of history, people and goods, rituals and beliefs, knowledge and gestures, which have shaped to a large extent the essence of Mértola. The castle and impressive walls surrounding the town centre of Mértola are a result of successive constructions in a long line of events, which began in the Iron Age and kept going until the 19th century. Although it is a successor to previous occupations from which it inherited structures and part of its layout, this castle is of Gothic origin, erected in 1292, the same time that Mértola became the first Portuguese headquarters of the Order of Santiago. The Knights of Santiago de Espada, St. James of the Sword, conquered Mértola in 1238, thus putting an end to almost 5 centuries of Islamic presence. According to the chronicles, they first broke into a tower downtown, then conquered Alcázaba, and only then will they have taken the entire village. In order to mark their territory, the new leaders adapted the mosque to the Christian cult, destroyed the palace area, and settled into the Almohada castle. In the late 13th century, reality was different. The kingdom borders had been established and eventual enemies who might covet them lived in the neighboring Christian kingdoms. In this context, with the political and diplomatical support of King Denis and Pope Nicholas IV, the Portuguese Knights of Santiago broke their connection with the international order based in Castile and elected their first master in 1292. They chose João Fernandes, Grand Commander of Mértola, who led the construction of a new castle that same year as to accommodate the first Portuguese quarters of the Order of Santiago de Espada, St. James of the Sword. The castle, adapted to the irregular topography and steep slopes of this place, is trapezium-shaped with towers at the corners. Very high and thick walls, and wide parapet walks, which enabled a solid defense at a time when war took place by means of siege and archery weapons, such as the famous crossbow. Within a robust setting stood the keep, positioned in a corner as to emphasize its vigilant and military role. It had 2 floors, with the ceremonial hall being covered by an elegant dome, where the first Portuguese master of Santiago and later on a few castle commanders stayed. The entrance, being the most vulnerable part of the castle, was defended by a forward bastion, a complex structure with a tower at the back and 2 more supporting the main gates, which were followed by a curved access to another door, as inherited from the Almohad period. On the south, you can see 2 corner towers, Carrocha Tower, over the cliff, thus provided with powerful buttresses, which served many times as a prison, and the Al-Qaid Pequeno Tower, which returned to the village and was established on a strong staggered base. The castle we see nowadays is a pale image of that which the Knights of the Order of Santiago built and lived in, which reached us after a long process of transformations and ruins of its structures and buildings. However, it is possible to view its morphology and organization in the early 16th century through sketch drawings from 1509 by Duarte de Armas, royal squire responsible for drawing the main Portuguese land border castles of the time. From the western side of Mértola, this fortification stands out well as its ground base. The lowered stronghold, which was added in the late 15th century as to receive artillery and strengthen the defense in that part, the main church, which used to be a mosque, where the old minaret still stands, and the ruins of the Weep Hole, built in 1475. On the eastern side, the view is visibly richer, with the riverside area, the walls, the forecastle arranged as an amphitheatre, the medieval cross, the main church where the 5 roofs of the old mosque remain, and at the top where the castle stands with its towers, turning attention to the keep and the impressive Al-Qaedaria at the centre, living quarters of the commander, built 20 years prior. From the entire plant, we are left with a close image of the castle's organization, with the walls strengthened by towers at the corners and the buildings where they lived their daily lives, such as the home of the Grand Commander, with 2 floors and a main staircase, the cistern, kitchens, headquarters, stables, and the Santiago Chapel, which served as the sanctuary of this place, symbolically defending it. The early 16th century Mértola Castle was subjected to many improvements in terms of operability and efficiency. All this took place at a time when the progressive predicament of firearms was starting to change the rules of war. And the world would never be the same again regarding the organization and composition of armies, military strategy, and fortifications. However, the thundering modern artillery might have brought the historic period of castles to an end, but their military importance was not lost. As was the case with Mértola Castle, which would remain on the strategic map of the territory and keeping a somewhat close eye on the military conflicts of the country from the Restoration War in 1641 to 1659 to the Civil War in 1828 to 1834, also experiencing the violent Napoleonic invasions of 1808 to 1810. Mértola Castle continued to serve one of its foremost aims up to the 19th century: to defend Mértola's strategic position in accessing the Guadiana River, the waterway that has always enabled a fast means of communication with the coast of the Algarve, as well as the Mediterranean and Atlantic Oceans.